Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take complex ideas, unpack them, and really focus on what matters most.
And today we're doing a deep dive into one specific text, Jeremiah chapter 10.
Right. Our goal here is to explore this, incredibly sharp contrast the chapter draws. It pits this description of ultimate divine power against the kinds of things humans often end up trusting in.
And see what insights, this ancient text might still hold for us.
Exactly. So where does it start? It kind of throws you right in, doesn't it?
It really does. No messing around. Verses 1 and 2 hit Israel with a direct warning. Do not learn the ways of the nations or be terrified by signs in the sky.
Okay, wait. Signs in the sky. That sounds, a bit archaic. Why
Yeah.
kick off with that specific warning? What's the deal there?
Well, it hints at the surrounding cultures, doesn't it? It suggests these other nations were maybe heavily influenced by celestial stuff, omens, things they saw as powerful or frightening.
Ah, okay. Like astrology or maybe just being spooked by comets or eclipses?
Could be that sort of thing. And the worry is that Israel might start adopting those same fears, those same interpretations, instead of relying on their own unique connection with God.
So it's a call to think differently right from the get-go. Don't absorb the anxieties around you.
Precisely. It's about spiritual and intellectual distinction. Don't look where everyone else is looking for power, especially if it's rooted in fear.
Okay. So if not the signs in the sky, where were others looking? The text moves right into their customs and specifically their idols.
Yes, and the description is almost painstaking, isn't it? Really highlighting the human effort. It walks you through making one.
How so?
Like someone goes out, cuts down a tree, then a craftsman shapes it with a chisel.
So totally a made object, starting from raw material, human skill involved.
Exactly. And then they don't just leave it plain. They overlay it with silver, with gold. Hammered silver from Tarshish, gold from Upaz, it sounds like, high-end imported stuff.
Wow, okay. So valuable materials too.
Right. Then they dress it up in blue and purple fabrics, colors of, like royalty or importance, all this skilled work, all this value poured in.
So you've got skill, effort, expensive materials building up this image. But then
But then the text just completely pulls the rug out. It shifts from how it's made to what it actually is, or rather what it isn't.
and the description changes dramatically.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're worthless, senseless, foolish. And then verse 5, that amazing image. They're like Scarecrow in a melon patch.
A scarecrow just standing there looking like something maybe, but totally inanimate, powerless, can't do a thing.
Exactly. And it keeps piling on. They cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot walk. Think about that. Your God needs a lift.
Yeah, that's pretty damning.
It gets worse. They can do no harm, nor can they do any good. They're called a fraud. Verse 14 says there's no breath in them.
No life at all.
None. Verse 15, objects of mockery. And the final verdict. When their judgment comes, they will perish.
So it's a total takedown. No matter how fancy or expensive or skillfully made, these human creations are fundamentally empty, lifeless, and doomed. Worthless. And that includes the associated customs too, right?
Right. The makers and the trusters are called senseless and foolish. It's all part of the same package.
And then right after painting this picture of utter emptiness,
Boom. The contrast. Verse 6. No one is like you, O Lord. You are great, and your name is mighty in power.
the absolute opposite of worthless and powerless.
Completely. It asks, who should not revere you, O King of the nations? This is your due. It sets the Lord apart from all the wise ones and kingdoms of the nations. There's just no comparison.
Unlike the idols, this is the true God, the living God, the eternal King. That's verse 10.
Living God, compared to something with no breath. Eternal King, compared to things that will perish. The contrast is just so deliberate, so sharp.
And the power described isn't just like political power, it's cosmic.
Totally. It zooms out from the craftsman's workshop to the whole creation. He made the earth by his power, founded the world by his wisdom, stretched out the heavens by his understanding. That's verse 12.
We're talking fundamental reality creation here, not just shaping wood.
Exactly. And he controls the very forces of nature that might have terrified other nations, those signs in the sky. Verse 13 talks about his voice making the waters roar, making clouds rise, sending lightning and rain, bringing wind from his storehouses.
Storehouses for the wind, that's quite an image. It really reframes those natural phenomena.
It does. It lands that initial warning with such force. Why fear the storm when the one directing it is the ultimate power? Look to the source, not just the scary effect.
Makes sense.
And this creator isn't distant. He's the maker of all things, and that includes Israel, described as the tribe of his inheritance. His name, the Lord Almighty, is tied to all this power.
And the fate of those other gods, the idols.
Sealed. Verse 11 gives this direct quote, almost like a divine decree inserted into the text. These gods who did not make the heavens and the earth will perish from the earth and from under the heavens. Game over for them.
Okay, so that first section sets up this incredibly stark choice. Trust in these flimsy human-made things that are going nowhere, or trust in the eternal creator of everything. That's intense.
It really is. And the chapter doesn't just leave it there as a theological point. It shifts gears pretty dramatically. The tone changes.
How so? What comes next?
It moves into the consequences, the suffering that happens when that trust is misplaced. There's a warning of judgment, of exile.
Right, I remember seeing that. Verse 17 tells people under siege to gather up your belongings to leave the land.
Yeah, it's specific. It's not abstract anymore. Disaster is coming. And verse 18 gives the reason. The Lord says he's going to hurl out the inhabitants, bring distress, let them be captured. It's framed as a direct result of, well, not listening to that initial warning.
And after that warning, the voice changes again, doesn't it? It becomes much more personal, full of pain, a lament.
Oh, absolutely. Verse 19 is raw. Woe to me because of my injury. My wound is incurable. There's this sense of unavoidable suffering, a sickness that just must be endured.
And the imagery is devastating.
It really is. My tent is destroyed. All its ropes are snapped. Your home, your security, gone. Exposed. My sons are gone from me and are no more. No one is left now to pitch my tent or to set up my shelter.
That's just total loss. Loss of family, future, help, utter desolation.
And importantly, this ruin is linked back to leadership. Verse 21 points the finger. The shepherds are senseless and do not inquire of the Lord, so they do not prosper, and all their flock is scattered.
So the leaders failed. They lacked wisdom because they didn't seek guidance from the right source, the one described earlier as the source of wisdom.
Exactly. The theological failure, not looking to the Lord, leads directly to the practical disaster, the people scattered, the nation ruined.
And there's even a specific threat mentioned.
Yes, verse 22. Listen, the report is coming, a great commotion from the land of the north. This threat from the north is presented as the instrument of judgment. It's what will make Judah's towns desolate, a haunt of jackals.
Wow. So misplaced trust leads to warning, then external threat, internal collapse, deep suffering, and it's all tied back to failed leadership, ignoring the true source of power. That's quite a cascade.
It is. And then, faced with this total mess, the voice shifts one last time. It moves from despair to a plea, a confession of just absolute dependence.
This is where that really famous line comes in, isn't it? Verse 23.
That's the one. I know, O Lord, that a man's life is not his own. It is not for man to direct his steps.
After everything described, the failed idols, the disaster, the powerlessness, that line just hits differently. It's admitting, fundamentally, we're not in control. We can't even figure out our own path.
It completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it? It acknowledges that self-reliance, especially the kind that trusts in worthless things or follows senseless leaders, just leads to ruin. Real direction has to come from that ultimate source of power and wisdom.
And from that admission, there's a specific request.
Yes, a plea in verse 24. Correct me, Lord, but only with justice, not in your anger, lest you reduce me to nothing. It's basically saying, okay, we messed up, we deserve consequences, but please discipline us fairly, don't just wipe us out in anger.
So there's still a hope for survival, even amidst the correction.
It seems so. And the final plea, in verse 25, circles back to the beginning. It asks for God's wrath to be poured out instead on the nations that do not acknowledge you, the ones who devoured Jacob and destroyed his homeland.
So it connects the initial warning about the nation's ways to them being the source of the current destruction, and pleads for justice against them while asking for mercy for Israel.
Exactly. It ties the whole chapter together. The problem of idols and foreign ways, the resulting judgment and suffering, the lament and failed leadership, and finally turning back independence, asking for just correction and deliverance. It's a whole arc.
A really powerful arc. Okay, let's take a breath here and try to connect this ancient text to, well, us now. That critique of human-made things, skillfully crafted but ultimately worthless, does that still hit home? What are our modern idols or worthless customs?
Ooh, I think it does. Maybe even more sharply now. Think about where we pour immense skill, time, money, energy today. Maybe it's not carved statues, but what about, say, the relentless pursuit of online validation, building a perfect digital persona?
Interesting. The personal brand as a modern idol.
Could be. Or maybe it's just the sheer accumulation of stuff, the belief that more wealth automatically equals more security or happiness, or even trusting too much in, say, a particular technology or political system to solve all our problems.
Right. Things made with human skill, using valuable resources like our time and attention. But the text forces the question, do they have real breath? Do they offer genuine security when things get fundamentally tough?
Exactly. When crisis hits personal illness, loss, global instability, do these things we've built up actually sustain us? Or are they like that scarecrow, just a facade, ultimately powerless to speak or help us walk through the fire?
That's a challenging thought. It's not saying skill or resources are bad, but questioning what we rely on them for, what ultimate trust we place in them.
And think about that contrast between human making and the Creator's power over the cosmos, the wind, the rain.
Do you
Challenges where our fear lies too.
We might not fear literal signs in the sky like eclipses.
Right, but maybe we're terrified by economic forecasts, or political instability, or climate change projections. The text pushes back, are these things the ultimate reality, the ultimate power, or are they phenomena within a larger reality governed by something or someone else? It asks us to calibrate our fear and our faith.
That makes sense. And what about that sequence? Misplaced trust, warning, crisis, suffering, lament, and then turning independence. Does that pattern feel familiar?
I think it resonates deeply, both personally and collectively. Don't we often see that cycle? We build our lives or societies on certain assumptions, certain trusts. Then a crisis hits, reveals the flaws, the foundations crack.
Yeah, and that often leads to a period of pain, confusion, maybe lamenting what's lost.
Right. And it's often out of that low point, that realization of, I can't fix this myself, that a turn towards something deeper happens. That confession, a man's life is not his own, often comes when our own plans have completely fallen apart.
And that final plea, correct me, with justice, not in anger. What does that tell us about the relationship being described, even when things are really bad?
It suggests, I think, that even within judgment, there's a hope for, well, fairness. It's not just arbitrary destruction. It acknowledges accountability, correct me, but appeals to a sense of justice, a hope that the correction won't mean total annihilation. It hints at a relationship where restoration is still possible, even after major failure.
So, quite a journey through Jeremiah 10. We've explored that really stark contrast between the Creator's described power and the inherent weakness of the things we humans often make and trust.
Yeah, we follow the path from that initial warning through the judgment and the really raw lament over suffering and failed leaders, right to that final vulnerable plea for correction and reliance on God.
It's definitely a chapter that doesn't pull punches. It forces you to think about where true power, true reliability really lies, challenging our tendency to put ultimate faith in things that might look impressive, but are in the end temporary and powerless.
So as you go about your day, maybe here's something to chew on, building on Jeremiah's critique. If we honestly identified the skillfully made, perhaps even valuable things we pour our energy and trust into today that ultimately have no breath in them, the things that can't truly sustain us, how might recognizing those things change our understanding of what is genuinely valuable, truly enduring, and really worth relying on?